everyone. We're now recording this meeting. Uh, Standard FedRAMP disclaimers apply to everything that goes on today. All information discussed today about FedRAMP updates, priorities, and policies are for the convenience of the public and are subject to change. All mention of specific commercial products or services is also for the convenience of the public and does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by the General Services Administration. So we have a lot of updates to blast through today. We got 20 minutes of me and Emu rambling about FedRAMP 20x, and then we're going to have a really cool demo with Google. First, some quick background. FedRAMP 20x was announced in March 5 months ago. The phase 1 pilot was launched in early May, 4 months ago, with a formal submission period that ran from May 30th to August 19th, which was last week, 2.5 months. The phase 1 pilot is still ongoing as we finish a review, etc. This phase 1 pilot was characterized by a lack of structure. We deliberately and explicitly set the most minimal guardrails possible and provided almost no support to see what kind of innovative approaches would be the most successful. We anticipated that only a few bold pioneers would commit to this, but instead we ended up completing the pilot in 2.5 months with submissions from 26 different companies that passed initial basic review. Emu's going to tell us a little bit of information about those companies.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. So yeah, we had 26 submissions, and as you could see on the chart, we had kind of like a steady stream throughout, and then the last 2 days it was like, whoo, to the moon. Everybody getting FOMO, wanting to get in on 20x. All right, so we're working through that backlog because, as you could imagine, getting suddenly like 12 to 14 just plopped on us. It's going to take a little bit of time to crank them through, but this is kind of what our queue is looking like right now. We've added some new folks to the team. They're helping out with review, and so we'll be churning through over the next few weeks. If you're in the queue right now, we will, keep communicating with you just to make sure you know where you're at and where you are in the process. All right, next slide, please. Just a handful of insights now that we've closed the period and kind of digging through some of the data. Something that was incredibly interesting is we have a whole lot of different service offering categories, like all across the board. Some stuff is like conversational AI, some stuff is public safety, case management, all kinds of different things. But we have 43%, like over 43% are GRC tools, GRC systems. And so that's pretty interesting to us. As far as our 3PAUs, our top so far number of 3PAU submissions, as you can see here, top 4. And then for our authorization count, that's on the top right there. Another thing to point out is package submission. Like Pete said, we kept it very open, kept it very choose your own adventure. And part of that adventure was figuring out where you were going to park your files. And in this case, an overwhelming number, 48% of packages parked them in a Git repo. And that's where we pulled them in. We had a handful that were file drops, and then we had actually a large number of GRC tools that the FedRAMP team has been logging into and doing, a lot of the KSI review in the tool itself, which has been a really interesting experience seeing all the different tools that are out there. Pete, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, 26 is a lot more than we expected, to be honest. It's maybe a little more than we bargained for even. I have to admit, I would have closed public submissions earlier once we realized how many were coming in, but we decided to just stick with it because we knew that there were a number of folks that were trying really hard to get things in before the deadline. And we got 12 submissions in the last week, which showed people were working really hard for that. So as we go through these, what's next beyond reviewing them, beyond just getting through the end of phase 1? So this is the current plan as of today. We're going to announce more detailed plans about phase two in the next community working group at the end of September. But for now, this is where we are standing on like where we're thinking. As well as next September, you can always look at our public roadmap at github.com/FedRAMP/roadmap or go to FedRAMP.gov and click the roadmap. We update that every 2 weeks, and that's based on changes to real world factors. So the most accurate, latest public information is always going to be on that roadmap every 2 weeks when we update it. So here's what we're looking at. The phase one pilot will continue until all qualifying pilot packages have completed collaborative review and have submitted a timeline for final authorization or determined that they wish to participate in the phase two pilot. Qualifying participants from phase one will be given the option of either completing a 20x low authorization as part of the phase one pilot or carrying that package forward into the phase two pilot to receive a 20x moderate authorization. Participants who have already received a 20x low authorization in the pilot, I believe there's 7 of them, 6 maybe, they will also receive this option to upgrade to the moderate in the phase two pilot. Phase two is expected to start in October. Right now, that's what we're planning on. Phase two will vary from phase one as follows. Pilot program authorizations in phase two will be done at either the low or the moderate level. There will be additional requirements for the moderate level. Participants in phase two will be expected to demonstrate continuous automated validation of a majority of technical controls. Phase one allowed a single automated validation pass combined with a plan to perform continuous validation, but phase two must include continuous validation where most of the technical controls are assessed at least daily. We also expect 3PAO assessments in phase two will assess the automation procedures in depth. We want them to focus on the automated validation process so that we know the outcomes and the outputs from that automated validation is consistent and doesn't change over time as long as the underlying methods don't change. Participants will be required to meet all FedRAMP 20x standards that have been released prior to the beginning of phase two to receive a phase two pilot authorization. And let me just jump in quick to say, the slides haven't changed. We didn't make a slide for this. You're getting this hot off the presses, this information. So you have to follow along and roll back on YouTube, check our blog post tomorrow for more details. Okay. So the key thing there is that in the phase two, you will have to meet all of the FedRAMP 20x standards in order to receive your pilot authorization. Right now, in phase one, you only needed to complete all of the standards that were released before the pilot. So there's like the authorization data sharing standard, significant change notification standard. There's going to be the continuous vulnerability management standard. You will have to meet all of those as part of phase two to get a moderate. On top of that, you will have to meet additional key security indicators that are aligned to the FedRAMP moderate baseline. Those will be announced near the start of phase two. We expect that to be on the order of 10 to 15 additional validations and mostly focus on a more in-depth look at the current KSIs. So it's not going to be like the typical SP 853 baseline. We're going from low to moderate, triples the amount of controls that you have. KSIs are designed to be all-encompassing. And so the moderate will be, are you doing it continuously? Are you doing it like effectively? And what is the pureness of your security posture? Unlike phase one, and this is, I think, probably hopefully the most exciting part for most of you, unlike phase one, we plan to release technical assistance for both cloud service providers and 3POs in advance of phase two. This technical assistance will still be very light so that we can encourage innovative solutions and a lot of community discussion about what's the right way to do things, but it will be based on what we've learned in phase one. Yeah. If you want to get a preview for the type of technical assistance that will be in there, we strongly recommend you follow along with the community working group thread for 20x that's on, what is it called, EMU, like Friday, like tips?
I think it's a Feedback Friday.
Feedback Friday, that's it. I knew it had to get. So check out Feedback Friday. That'll give you a little bit of a spoiler of the type of things that we'll be providing as technical assistance. And we do plan to provide additional technical assistance for all KSIs just to help people get a feeling for things. Now, I think it's really important to understand that if you were not participating in phase one and you aren't actively building a phase two package right now and it is almost ready to go, you probably will not be able to get your package in phase two. It is going to be more work than phase one and is going to require more effort. And so what you need to do is continue to follow along with the pilot, see what we're doing, and be ready for when phase two ends and we open this up to the public. Our goal right now is to complete. So, okay, taking a step back. Our goal initially was to go phase one pilot, then release phase one as like a certified complete FedRAMP authorization, and then go to phase two as moderate and do phase two moderate reviews at the same time as we were doing low reviews. Now our intent, because of the sheer quantity of interest, is to do phase one for low as a pilot, phase two for low and moderate as a pilot, and we will not finalize or formalize non-pilot authorizations until after phase two completes. So stand by. If you're not doing this right now, you're going to probably want to stand by until January when we finalize this is what a FedRAMP 20x authorization for low and moderate looks like outside the pilot. Recapping the difference between phase one and phase two. Phase one was focused on proving that automated validation was possible. Phase two is focusing on proving that continuous automated validation at a higher impact level is possible. We also do expect to see initial agency adoption during phase two, but throughout these pilots, generally our focus remains on building the ecosystem for agency adoption later. We want to get this all lined up so that agencies have a clean, clear path to adopting 30, 40 cloud services via this methodology rather than doing a bunch of one-offs. Okay, that's not all. If you haven't taken a look, I want to highlight the release of the authorization data sharing standard. If you follow along FedRAMP's website and changelog, you will have seen this by now. If you can check it out at FedRAMP or github.com/FedRAMP/docs, or you can go to FedRAMP.gov/20x/standards to see the latest materials. We've done a few things to our 20x documentation based on some feedback. We've pulled definitions out of individual standards and we've consolidated those into a standalone standard for definitions. I think that's going to be a bit easier to maintain. One of the things that we saw just very consistently in feedback was that when somebody looked at one standard, they would say, why isn't this defined, even though it was defined in another standard? So this way, all the definitions are in one place. The authorization data sharing standard, though, is the formalized evolution of what was the pilot standard for storing and sharing authorization data from RFC 11. That was simplified and updated based on public comment. It provides a mechanism for cloud service providers to make authorization data available directly to customers via machine readable formats. And it defines machine readable formats using a definition from the law for all the people that have been asking for a definition. And we're really looking forward to seeing how people adopt that. One of the things that is a key piece here is that there is no ecosystem in place for agencies to consume machine readable data from a large number of cloud service providers. That ecosystem doesn't exist because there isn't a bunch of machine readable information available from cloud service providers. So this is the first step in starting to create that ecosystem. And we hope that over the next 3 to 4 months, we'll see a combination of 20x cloud service providers and Rev 5 cloud service providers who participate in the balance improvement releases. You have to participate in one of our betas in order to do this. Please don't do it on your own. That will create that marketplace where there will finally be machine readable information that we can roll. Okay. I am super excited to see how that's going to play out. It's going to be really awesome. I do want to clarify phase one pilot participants don't have to meet that standard because it wasn't published at the beginning. But all phase one pilot participants who do walk away with a pilot authorization have to demonstrate continuous progress towards all of these standards and will have a year to meet them. And I expect most of them will do it much faster than that. All right. Those are the big updates out of the PMO. If you have additional questions about this as we move forward, please post them in the 20x community on GitHub so we can ensure, as always, that everyone gets equal and fair access to information. I do want to take a moment just to say we try to be really responsive to email that comes in about general questions and things like that. But it is when we're responding to email, we're not executing on this mission. And there's a lot of questions that we get that are on our webpage. They are in the community working groups. So just always encourage, especially the consultants out there, et cetera, encourage people to do the research. We are doing our best to keep our information up to date so that I don't have to personally answer 20 questions about when the deadline is or things like that. The source of truth is always our webpage and our GitHub. Pay attention to it, subscribe, get those updates, get those notifications, et cetera. Okay, why don't you jump us to the next slide? All right. So today we've also invited Google here to do a demo. This is something we've been trying to do, meeting after meeting to bring in like real world tools so you can see some stuff in action. Google is going to demo their cloud compliance manager, which is just something super cool that we saw a preview of not too long ago. It's a tool built within Google Cloud Platform that will help organizations manage and track their compliance with various industry standards and regulations. And it's gonna support FedRAMP 20x. So I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Thanks, Pete. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Shah, and my colleagues Ruchi, Khurana, and Ben Fowler are on as well. Ben and I support public sector compliance for Google Cloud. I'm going to tee us off here by just reiterating to start off, the Google is committed to FedRAMP 20x and towards the vision of automated continuous compliance. There is a lot of exciting acceleration going on right now with FedRAMP 20x, the 20x prioritization of AI-based cloud services, our recent Gemini for Government announcement, and broadly speaking, we're excited to help accelerate the compliance journey for our partners across government and industry, and for our customers developing 20x compliant applications natively on GCP. We're doing this through a recently announced solution called Google Cloud Compliance Manager, as Pete mentioned. And as we add features and native 20x support to Compliance Manager in the coming months, we're going to continue working closely with companies such as StackArmor to ensure that the tools we build are useful in real-world scenarios and tangentially accelerate customer compliance with 20x requirements. We're also validating Compliance Manager's ability to meet 20x requirements with our third-party assessor Coalfire as well, just to make sure there are some checks and balances that keep us on track and make sure what we're delivering actually meets the spirit and the requirements of 20x. So Pete, team, we appreciate the time today. We appreciate the partnership with 20x. And I'm now going to hand it off to my colleague, Ruchi, for a presentation and demo of Compliance Manager.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Pete. Will, would you mind going back to the last slide, please? Awesome, cool. So as we all know, right, in today's modern landscape, cloud is no longer a compliance challenge, but an ally to all of us. Cloud is really helping us to get transparency into compliance posture across the entire stack, be it the infrastructure, which is primarily a cloud service provider responsibility, or the workload or data that our customers are putting on cloud, which is primarily a customer responsibility. But as a host cloud provider, our mission at Google is to automate assessments, evidence generations, evidence validation, and on-demand continuous monitoring and reporting across the entire stack of shared responsibility. We are doing this to achieve 3 joint goals with our customers and 3 joint wins. Number 1 is how we can help everybody here dramatically reduce FedRAMP authorization timelines. Number 2 is how we as Google Cloud host provider unlock more and more cloud native services for the federal agencies and accelerate our own FedRAMP ATO process so that you get out of the box FedRAMP compliant services and products to use. Third, but not the least, and we're going to do a cool demo of this, is provide tools and automation to modernize the compliance landscape so that it's all automated and compliance is no longer a check in the box exercise. Next slide, please. So when you are migrating your workloads to cloud, right, like customers deeply care about reducing the risk in the cloud. That risk can be security risk, compliance risk, privacy, resiliency. There are like a lot of risk that customers are trying to reduce when they are moving their workloads to cloud. Now, they all want ability to express a risk reduction intent. And the beauty of FedRAMP 20x is KSIs are those intent, like how I can express my key security indicator in a very flexible manner, in multiple modes where I'm able to prevent something to go wrong. Or if I cannot prevent, can I even have like a detection logic? Can I monitor things? Can I minimize all my violation and reduce the risk when I'm migrating to the cloud? And last but not the least, how I can run an audit to prove to the auditors and 3PAWs on, okay, for this particular framework and KSI, here is the sheet, like what I'm passing, what I'm failing, if I'm failing, why I'm failing. And then there is a lot of automation in the machine readable format, which we're going to demo. Also, keep in mind, cloud is a little complex. Customer wants to do this intent on one or more cloud resources at one or more application level, be it project, folder, app. And it gets a lot of like confusing, like how should I do this? How should I put my intent? And customer wants to do it across entire enterprise or different business unit. So what we are trying to do with, next slide, please, with the compliance manager is trying to bring all of this together in a single pane of glass across the entire stack, be it an infrastructure level that Google Cloud is providing out of the box or as a host provider, we are responsible for it. For the workloads that customers are hosting and the data that customers are putting, how we can provide that compliance layer in the single pane of glass, not only at day zero of the cloud journey, but day 1 to 2 years to 3 years from now, as you onboard more regulated, more FedRAMP workloads, how you can achieve that state of compliance and ultimately reduce the risk. If you'll go to the next slide, well, another important thing we all know that as compliance professionals is everybody is not on the same page. That is the biggest problem, right? Like when people are developing the product, applications engineer may have very different intent of how we put a security control. But with KSIs, we can actually shift left and make sure the applications engineers understand those KSIs and can implement at the start of the cycle. Cloud SRE, platform engineering, be it CISO team, GRC, auditors, how we can make sure we are breaking down the organizational silos and bringing everybody together again at not only at day zero of their cloud journey, but also at day N to reduce the risk. Going to the next slide, please. So what we are doing, I know Pete and Will mention here, we just announced a product called Compliance Manager. Compliance Manager is right now in public preview for our customers, and it will be in general availability soon by end of this year. Compliance Manager offers an end-to-end security, privacy, and risk management solutions for our customers so that they can have visibility and transparency into compliance across the stack. There are 3 main functionality of Compliance Manager. I will talk through first 2, and then we'll do a demo of the third one. So the first functionality is configure. So if I have to translate configure into FedRAMP 20x context, think of this as, now we have this FedRAMP 20x law, we have underlying KSIs. How you as customers can take all those KSIs and enforce those KSIs across your Google Cloud workload or data with the intent of getting the compliant state. And you can do it, you can apply that configuration on Google Cloud resource level, project level, or folder level. And you can also add more controls, delete more controls, or add more KSIs or delete more KSIs. So a lot of flexibility around how you configure your FedRAMP 20x based upon what is your risk appetite, what is your organization structure, how you are trying to make a particular Google Cloud project or folder compliant to FedRAMP 20x. Once you have configured that particular framework or deployed it, the next step is continuous controls monitoring or continuous framework monitoring. We all know that in today's world, it's very important to get to the state of what is happening in my environment. I want to see it near real time so that I'm able to remediate the risk as soon as possible. I want to make sure if I am getting something, there is some drift, what is the drift, how I can manage the drift, what is the finding, how I can remediate the finding. So a lot happens within continuous control monitoring. And as I said, last but not the least, now you have configured your FedRAMP 20x. You are continuously monitoring your FedRAMP 20x. Now let's go ahead and run an audit to see what is the result. Are you doing the right things on the cloud? Are you generating the right evidences? And are you getting the right machine readable outputs or not? With that, I'm gonna present and do a little demo of audit part of Compliance Manager today because we have less time, but if we'll get time, we can do the full one very soon too. Okay. You guys can see my screen? Awesome. Okay, so this is how the audit module of Audit Compliance Manager works. So number one, as I said, Google is a cloud host provider and we have our own responsibility. And we want to be very transparent to our customers on, hey, how Google is meeting these controls and how we are getting certified against some industry best standards. And we want to be very transparent to our customers in providing those reports. So as you can see, as a step number one, customers can come to Compliance Manager and download audit reports, be it PCI, SOC 2. We also have added FedRAMP customer responsibility matrix for our customers so that they can understand what is Google responsibility versus customer responsibility. It's a very simple portal where you just select the report that you want to see from a Google Cloud infrastructure perspective and download the report. So that is more about the automation of the platform and the reports of the platform controls. Number two, when we talk about shared responsibility, we are giving our customers a lot of guidance on how they can implement a specific type of control. So let's take this denial of service. We are adding a lot of data around how Google is meeting this control as a cloud host provider, but also as a customer who's migrating their data to Google Cloud. What is your responsibility? What exactly you need to do to meet this particular KSI? So you can see across all the KSI, we have added some guidance on Google Cloud specific services. What is Google responsibility versus what is customer responsibility? And this is where the magic happens. Customers can go and run the audit of their workloads. It's very simple to run the audit here. It's fully automated. Customers needs to go and select a particular GCP project where they want to run the audit. Remember in configure, you have configured tons of frameworks. I pre-configured FedRAMP 20x low for us, so I'm going to select that. I want to run my audit in US East location, so I'm going to select US East and click on next. This gives me an audit plan, which has the underlying evaluation logic on how these assessments are getting generated, how the evidence are getting generated. So if you are interested, you can download this particular plan and look at for each and every KSI, what is the evaluation logic which is helping you to generate the right evidence. Once you click on next, you can select your own storage bucket. So Google is not seeing what are the evidences for a particular customer. It's customer's own storage bucket, and evidences are stored in customer's own Google Cloud storage bucket, and they can manage their evidences by themselves. You click on done, just 3 steps, and run the audit. And it will take a while depending upon the number of resources it's scanning. And my environment is like a demo environment. So I'm going to pull a previously ran FedRAMP 20x report. So as you can see from here, for this particular FedRAMP 20x, we configured 28 KSIs out of 51. We can see like how many of them are compliant, how many of them are violated. There will be KSIs where we need some manual review or a policy is needed. For example, security training. There will be an additional policy that will be needed for a Google Cloud customer to have their own organizational security policy. And then where something is not getting scanned, we will show that. So this is like the overall dashboard. And if I'll open this, I can see in detail what is getting violated. Of course, I have a lot of violation because it's a demo environment, but you should be able to see, okay, what is violating? Let's take this denial of service as an example. Here you can see, oh, this is getting violated. What's happening here? Oh, my layer 7 DDoS defense is false. It should be true. So you can figure out what is the configuration that is not set up right and giving you violation and not helping you to pass the audit. And the other beautiful thing here is you click here to open the evidence. Once you do that, it takes you to your Google Cloud Storage bucket where you were storing all these evidences. You can download that evidence in a machine readable format. We support JSON as that machine readable format. And here is all the metadata. Once I download this particular JSON format, you can see here is the evidence of that particular KSI of DDoS, and here is my JSON, which again, I can share it with my 3PAS or ingest it into any other system. Going back here, other thing I can do here is now I want to share the report of my entire FedRAMP 20x package with my 3PAO. I can go ahead and export the entire report out. It's again an ODS format, open data source, which you can convert to your any format which you want according to your organization. I love spreadsheets, so I converted it to a spreadsheet. And you can see here is the entire report of all the KSIs. What is the control information? What is Google responsibility? What is Google customer responsibility? What is the status? And then link to the report and the evidence, which is here. Customers are adding more and more metadata to it. If you have a compensating control, if you have another policy, you can go ahead and add more metadata to this report to make sure all the edge cases are covered as well. So that was the demo of Audit Manager, and we are bringing more and more configure and monitoring features along with Audit as well. Back to you, Will and Ben.
Yeah, I think Pete, we're ready for the Q&A. I saw some questions come in, so
Love it. Yeah. I mean, first of all, let me like level set a little bit of clarity up front just to set the background for folks. The target audience for this is, correct me if I'm wrong, a cloud service provider that is built on Google Cloud Platform that wishes to demonstrate, like audit themselves, test their things. That is who this is for, right? Is a feature for Google customers that want to create cloud services. For the record, there are nods. For people listening in on audio, there are nods from Google. So, all right, yeah, let's go through a couple questions. One of them I thought was really interesting right up front was, you showed kind of an analog to the customer responsibilities matrix as you were clicking through the KSIs. A customer has to do this, Google does this. Do you have that information available elsewhere in a format that people can peruse? Is it public? Would you plan on making that available?
Right now, it's in the product, but if there is enough customer demand, of course, we want to make sure we are hearing from our customers and doing what they want.
Copy that. All right, another question here. I'm going to turn it into a question. Is there a robust API for managing the configuration, monitoring, and audit functions, or is it all GUI only?
Right now, it's GUI only, but in future, we are looking to support other API-based features as well.
Fair enough. There's a question here. There's a couple of questions that are kind of how does this interact with other clouds?
Right now, it works just for the Google Cloud and Google Cloud customers and their workloads because it's a platform feature, a platform product that we are providing to our customers. We are not trying to be a GRC product. It's purely for helping Google Cloud customers who are deploying workload on GCP and helping them accelerate their FedRAMP authorizations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I saw in there a whole bunch of other different compliance regimes that can be printed out. Is there a standard SP 853 integration in place to some degree as well?
Yes, we currently support Nest 853 Ref 4. We are working on Ref 5 as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's super cool. So here's an interesting question that maybe like you walk folks through in a little bit more in depth. So we get to see this cool user interface that shows we know all these settings are red or green, et cetera. How are you actually mapping that evidence to those controls? Like what goes in behind the scenes to get to where there's a report that says, true, false, this should be set to true, it's set to false. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so what we are doing for each and every KSI, right? What is the evaluation logic? So if you look at Google Cloud as a whole, we have a lot of services. When customers are deploying the workloads, there are a lot of those resources and their asset inventory that is getting created. So once you deploy a particular control, you need to know like in what asset that control is deployed, and then we are doing the API pull and measuring if it has been deployed across all the GCP resources or not. And then based upon all that measurements and API pull based upon our asset inventory, we are giving that evidence of, okay, you have successfully deployed this control maybe 70%, but not are doing it like 20% or 30%. And when I was running the audit, I showed that there is a plan. So if customers wants to see what is the underlying logic and evaluation template for each and every KSI, they can download it. Another beautiful thing of the overall compliance manager, I just showed the audit piece of it, is when you are configuring a particular KSI, you can change that evaluation logic. We are calling something called as parameterized control. So you can put a particular parameter according to your organization. So I'll give you a very stupid example, and I have not seen that in KSI, but one of the customer was like, oh, if you give password rotation after every 90 days, but I want to do it after every 30 days, how I can do it. So there will be flexibility for the customers to change that parameters and apply that intent based upon what is their overall organizational policies, and change that evaluation logic accordingly.
That's fantastic. That answers one of the next questions we had. And I think it's worth kind of highlighting at this point too, that because this is Google on Google Cloud infrastructure, you are referencing the source of truth. Like if someone has configured a button in Google Cloud saying, I would like this button to be on, and you report they have configured that button to be on, you can assume that the button is on. That is a correct thing.
Yes,
So
and that is a challenge lot of time compliance team faces, right? Like because that turning of button on and off is not something that is visible to an auditor or a GRC team, because that button on and off is done by a platform engineering team or infrastructure team. So by running the audit, you can get transparency into if the right button is on or off, so that you as the compliance professional or auditors can go and talk to your platform engineering and other cloud infrastructure teams to put the right on and on, off and on settings.
All right. One of the things that we talked about here, but today was like during phase 2, we expect people to be running these validations on a continuous basis, daily reports, et cetera. Is the intent to add like scheduled assessment, third party like access? Like what if you could wave a magic wand, create an ideal world, like what are you thinking about? How does the government customers or banks or cloud service provider customers, how are they consuming this? How frequently? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll answer it from a customer perspective first, because that's what we are focused on in the near future is. I mentioned about configure, monitor, and audit. So the middle pillar, monitor, is something what we want to get to is customers are getting almost near real-time monitoring of once you deploy the FedRAMP 20x framework. This is how this framework is doing across the resources that you have applied it for. So that is where we are going right now. Now you have configured FedRAMP 20x. It's monitoring piece is what will give you that transparency into the continuous monitorings and controls. And now you want to run a point in time audit to prove that I have done all the right things. Here you run the audit and get the report out. And I know Deep is on the chat and he's also answering a lot of questions. So thanks, Deep.
Awesome. Um, there's another thing here which is interesting, which is always sort of like accountability. So great, you provide this capability to a customer that's using Google Cloud Platform. They generate a report. It has a whole bunch of fails in it. They go through and they write a script, they throw it in a chat GPT and they say change all these fails to passes. And then they send, the government customer, hey, look, we got like all greens, like this is great. Like, you have anything in mind to prevent that and ensure that we're not going to see activity like that down the road?
Yes, so two things, right? Like one is process and one is more technical. So from a process perspective, we are partnering with 3PAUs, first of all, to make sure whatever the evidence is getting out of the audit part of compliance manager, overall compliance manager, is also validated by 3PAU. Because if, let's say, if we have same example, DDoS, is turning on that setting enough, or does customer needs to do more things or less things? So really working hand in hand with 3PAUs to make sure the evidence is acceptable. And then secondly, yes, we are thinking through the tamper proofing of the evidence, so that once evidence gets out, it's not, nobody is tampering with the evidence, and we want to maintain the authenticity of the evidence. Definitely that is something on the top of the mind.
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, this is you call it a preview, a beta. What was the status?
Yes, it's preview. So a lot of exciting things coming later this year and next year.
Yeah. So at the moment, right now, presumably it is only targeted for certain Google services, and you have to kind of deliberately add on capabilities for each service over time. Is that right?
So two parts of it, right? Like when it comes to making Google services as FedRAMP 20x compliant, we are still working on it. This is more automating customer responsibility. So if, let's say, there is a customer, Google Cloud customer, who is deploying some sensitive workload tomorrow, they can start using it, using the functionality and configure the KSIs, monitor the KSI, and audit the KSIs. Of course, we want to build it with the customers and make sure this is right things for the customers. So we are willing to work with everybody here.
So in a kind of a slightly different vein and less about the product and more about just like the vibes of it all. Obviously in the course of this product, you've built out things to comply with 853 controls. I saw like PCI in there, et cetera, and then the 20x key security indicators. We have a question here, and I'm really curious to know as well, sort of like, what are your any hot takes on some of the key security indicators? Did you learn anything about it? Like, give us a quick overview of what that was like working with those as opposed to the 50,000 other ways we've tried to do this in the past.
Yeah, I'll give you my honest take, and then I would also let my colleagues Will and Ben share their take. My take on it was simple, like it was more automated. It was not like, hey, 100 pages of documentation that I didn't have to interpret it a lot, and it was clear. Of course, we can add more technical kind of evaluations, but it marries to today's world of technology and now not an outdated technology. And as I said, even our intent with this compliance manager is to get to the state of continuous controls monitoring and evidence generation in a machine readable format. So from a thought process perspective and where the industry is going, I love FedRAMP 20x. So that is my personal take. But Will, Ben, do you have more thoughts?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I think something 20x has done a really good job of at the outset, and hopefully will continue to do, is having that community engagement space on the draft KSIs was really cool to observe. Something pros and cons, right, associated with that is having a stable set of KSIs to compare, contrast our internal controls to build towards, especially since engineering timelines can be a little long sometimes, right? So that was really helpful. And I think that's something that'll be really helpful moving forward as well. So that we're not aiming at a moving target. We're aiming at a target we know is clearly delineated and can build towards.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd add is,
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
sorry. The only thing I'd add is before with Rev 5, like each control through the SRTM had a specific test to run. And with KSIs now, like you have a lot more flexibility, modularity, and not only can you decide how to meet those KSIs, but then your agency customers can decide, hey, do we agree with that, mapping or not?
Yeah, it's always the complexity of the trade-off between, no, you have to do it exactly this way. That makes it easier in theory, but then that only works if you are okay with doing it that way. If you have a better way of doing it, and especially a more secure way of doing it, well, why are we making you do it that way? It's no good for anyone. I I'm super stoked about this. We have one other question, which is that Will, I think you mentioned something about a partnership with Stack Armor, and people are curious. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And since it's outside the scope of this demo, it's totally okay if you don't want to talk about it here.
Yeah, I can't really speak to Stack Armor's solution, but we are closely working with partners such as Stack Armor to make sure that, we're not just building something in a silo here that we think meets 20x requirements, right? We're building something in collaboration with customers like Stack Armor to make sure that they can successfully build their solutions on GCP for 20x compliance. And then, as Ruchi mentioned, we're going in and getting that validated, externally validated by a 3PAL. I know there was some points made in the comment of like, how do you make sure you're accountable, right? That's a key part of it, is to have the honesty to say, we're going to have an external auditor take a look at this, make sure that our internal controls are mapping accurately to the KSIs, and that those KSIs are working in real life scenarios to address the spirit, Pete, of what you and the whole 20x team is doing.
Yeah, that is sick. Also, great question just came in the main chat, which is who's going to have access to this? Is the GRC engineering going to have access to it? Is it only going to be some compliance person? And like, how do you provision access? I assume like everything on the cloud, it's up to the person that has the root account to determine who in the organization gets access to it, right?
I can take this. So the compliance manager is designed with the vision of it needs to have access across the company. When I share, right, like we want to break down these silos of what a platform engineer see versus what a GRC team see. We want everybody to be on the same page, and we will have a lot of public documentation on how everybody can get the access. And of course, maybe GRC team would need to work with their admins, cloud admins, to get the access. But the product is designed to make sure everybody understand that. One thing I did not cover in the demo or the slide deck is our data model is very simple. What we are trying to do here is we are trying to bring a lot of non-technical audience and technical audience together. So I'll give you an example. A technical audience would say, hey, this is my org policy, which does encryption at TLS 1.2, blah, 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 blah. And my GRC person will say, no, I need to comply with this NIST 853 SC something encryption control. Sorry if I've misspoken the control, but just as an example. So what we are trying to do is wrap this like technical policy into the compliance control, so that if somebody is coming more from a GRC angle, they can take a regulatory control view, versus something is coming from a technical angle, they can look at more from a technical perspective. And that's how we want to make sure all the people are coming closer in the company.
That totally makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm super excited. Okay, one last question here I'm gonna ask. Like, do you see a world where your customers are using capabilities like this as a predominant, like this is where they are doing most of their compliance work, like moving away from documents, spreadsheets, external things, and just focused on plugging in with compliance manager, with other third-party tools, and doing it this way?
I would say if the world is moving towards compliance modernization, then everybody in the world should be looking at moving away from spreadsheets and old school method of auditing, and using some shape or form of tools and technology to do audits and monitoring and things like that. Will they be using just compliance manager or compliance manager with conjunction with their GRC tool? We are open for both, right? Like we want to make sure this works for the customers. If customer wants output of compliance manager in a GRC tool, how two can work together. Yes, we are very open for collaboration there, and hear from the customer what will help them to reduce that compliance toil, so that they no longer are doing compliance manually. So that is the goal, that is the mission we want to achieve.
All right, final thing, where do people go after this call to find out more? I think it's going into the chat.
Yeah,
I'm gonna find the link and paste it in the chat.
same here.
And when in doubt, go to FedRAMP's community, find the GitHub discussion for this, the announcement post for this community working group, and there will be follow-up information there as well. Oh yeah. All right. So the question really is, what do I Google to find out more? Because this year, I'm guessing if you Google Google Compliance Manager Preview FedRAMP, you will find this, right?
Yes, and a lot of people posted the link. So either Google Cloud Compliance Manager or click on the link.
I love it. All right. Thank you for coming by and doing this demo today. I think this is the 5th or 6th demo that we've done. As a general reminder, not endorsement or recommendation from the General Service Administration, but we're really stoked to highlight some of these really cool things that people are doing, and just showing, I think, that when we first started talking about this back in March, it wasn't a revolutionary idea. There's a lot of people in the industry that have been doing this and thinking about this for a long time. What was kind of revolutionary was regulatory framework saying, no, we want to lean into this and push this and create an environment where people can develop this type of capability. So we're only a few months in, seeing a hyperscale provider, starting to add this capability in. I think that shows us, combined with the 26 submissions that we got come through, is crazy. This is really going in a good direction. I hope that maybe we'll see some folks in the moderate pilot or in phase 2 that are using Google Compliance Manager as part of their thing, as well as some of the tools that are part of phase 1 related to this. So thank you all very much for coming by today. Keep an eye out on our website, on our blog. Over the rest of the week, we'll be posting our monthly update with the phase 2 information that we talked about a bit today. Also, right now, you can go to FedRAMP.gov/20x/phase 2 and just wait for the additional news. But we're really excited. Thank you for coming by today, and we'll see you all next month or on the interwebs. Cheers, everyone.